Christian, thank you very much for coming to talk to us about the One-Handed Musical Instrument project. The issues connected with this project are really, really profound, and particularly about the production of the musical note. Apparently simple thing, electronic instruments across the world producing musical notes at the touch of a button. But this is really a long way away from how the musician operates with production.
Because we do something completely different. What we try to emulate is not a certain pitch at a certain strength and a certain length. What we try to emulate is the music, the human voice.
Yeah.
We want to reflect on speech, on singing, on weeping, screaming, on all our utterances.
Yeah.
And of course they are not determined. They have to be invented. Even in a given musical piece, every phrase has to be invented to make the sense a spoken sentence makes. So if I say the sense a spoken sentence makes to you, it is totally different than I give already with the inflection of my words. I give sense to the what I want to say.
So it's not even that you're preparing in advance, but it's happening as you're playing.
Yeah. If it were prepared in advance, it's not uncommon. It happens. But then the element of telling somebody a secret at this moment is gone. You know, oh, this is exactly the story he has told, this and this and this. So then what is the point of opening my heart? It's because I have to unburden me. In almost all our pieces, it is about this totally human aspect of playing.
So in creating these instruments, the instrument maker or the scientist, because we're looking also at a lot of electronic possibilities here, they're going to have to find some way in which the human body can provide the subtleties and constantly changing inputs that occur as you play.
Yeah, so that's a fascinating challenge, I would say.
Indeed, extremely difficult. I think this is the big challenge for them all, because we've seen a lot of musical instruments. I've been introduced to a lot of new musical instruments, so-called anything that you can play, tune-ons in that sense. But none of them seem to come close to this particular difficulty. Of all the instruments that we're looking at, the violin, I suspect, will be the hardest to emulate. That subtlety, that extraordinary
flexibility. It depends on what you want to circumnavigate. As we, with the woodwind instrument, of course, most of the soul lies in the lips. So if that is a given that has not to be replaced or changed, then the soul will be easiest to recreate in those instruments. For the violin, the actual action lies in the left hand, in the fingertips, the sense of the fingertips, and in the bow arm, which is even more complex because it has more to do with the speech emulation we do on an instrument, with total subtle phrasing and moving. It has to do with a very complex motion.
And it becomes, for the musician, it becomes not a matter of you instructing your body to do these things, as one might do with something that's driven by software.
Well, there is in the beginning, there is a way, this is a stroke.
Okay.
But the moment the stroke becomes a sentence and you say, with like you say with your voice,
then you're not consciously saying, I will turn it this way, I'll turn it that way.
But the melody, for instance, that the composer gives you, there is a few ways where it makes sense, but that lives from constant swelling and dynamic, stressing some notes, so it cannot be computerized in any way.
So would you say that it's what you hear you're performing? I'm just thinking of this route, that you're making a sound that has some expressive meaning to you and interconnection with the other sounds around you, from your players, from the orchestra.
Of course, yeah.
At the same moment, at the very same moment, you're changing, altering in subtle ways what you're doing, according to what you hear. It's going in that great...
According to what I hear, according what the harmony and the melody at the moment does to me. The excitement I feel with certain tension harmonies will translate into a tighter vibrato, because then, it's adrenaline, excitement, or feelings like love and anger that will reflect in how my body moves. I mean, that's the big thing. This is what, if handicapped people play instruments, this is this is why this should be done, because it is such a pleasure to be able to express yourself on a musical instrument.
Yes.
It cannot be about to achieve a certain goal to play this and this piece. It's just about a means of expression that everybody should, if he wants, have.
Where we've started with the OHMI project about the idea of undifferentiated participation with other musicians. So it doesn't matter, we hope, what your disability might be, and certainly we're looking at hemiplegia initially, that you can play alongside other musicians. Because there's this double pleasure. There's what you do to play the instrument, but then there's what you do connecting with other instruments and sounds that you're hearing around you.
That's two sides, and the other one is connecting with the composer.
Okay,
That's a very, for me, of course, chamber music and playing with others is a big thing, but this knowledge that somebody like Brahms or Bach, they put their innermost life into there, and we can reinvent it, and we can have communication with them on a very, very deep level. That is something that's fascinating in itself.
We're very interested to find that people who had been musicians and had lost ability with a limb and then couldn't play had a quite different approach. Their minds, their brains, could operate musically, but then they couldn't deliver it physically. But there's a suggestion that they could relearn different instruments much more quickly as a result. Well, do your instincts think that that's
Well, I know a case in my family. My daughter broke her wrist, and she was a very beautiful violin player, and she broke it in a way that the chirurgs, they said she will never be able to play again. And she picked up the oboe, and after 1 year she was solo oboe of the youth orchestra, where she before played the fiddle. I think it's two things, because she had got the taste of what being a performer can be, so the real wish to go there, and the area in the brain for making music is probably blown up out of proportion, and so and the strong and I think with a strong will to do that, not because parents said at one point you should learn a musical instrument, but because you know what it is to be a performer, and then you want to go back there.
Well, one of our scientist colleagues made this statement about the possibility of virtuosity in being with the instruments that I've referred to before, that and we think this is a really fundamentally important point, that and it's again contrasting with other instruments around that, well, so-called instruments, things almost toys, but the instruments that come out of the electronics industry particularly, they don't seem to have that potential, that you can't find increasing depth in expressiveness within them, that they seem to be very limited in that way. And perhaps that, as you express it there, that understanding of what can be possible, that you're hearing something, and come back to this loop again, you're hearing something perhaps in your mind and comparing it with what your instrument is doing, what you're doing with your instrument, and being able to push it on and change it and morph it.
I mean, it's all the time, it's what we do is mind over matter. It starts with the composer who has a total vision of sounds, and he has this paper, and he notates as good as one can what he heard, and we put it back into something we hope that's close to what he was hearing. And how we exactly do it to get the expression, we have an imagination of what the melody should sound like, and the rest follows. The body follows a musical imagination. I know what can be used to give possibility to a yearning sound, to make it abstract, but how it then in performance, or when you're into it, what then still changes, that is a little more mysterious, because it also has to do with the aura of your personality when you play, and the reaction of the audience then comes layer upon layer. And that's of course the beauty of it. If a composer writes an accent that has a desperate chord under it, and we do this, which is the gesture also one would, as a little shock. So the bow does this, and it might have a little noise in the beginning, and then you release a bit, because it would otherwise the noise would be predominant. So in the end you end up with something that has a noise of anger, and then the reaction of the body to it.
That's very beautifully said.
Well, that's quite a challenge for them.
It is. It's an enormous challenge,
Yeah.
and it's going to be. We'll run this for many years, I hope, and I think it'll be a difficult start to get to the first layers. But because it's so tightly focused, there's a number of the technologists, instrument makers, scientists we've spoken to seem pleased for the restriction that they've got.
Yeah.
And trying to emulate the orchestral instrument is a challenge that they start off thinking is very simple. And within 5 minutes...
What I really like about the whole project from my point of view is for people who have nothing to do with classical music and maybe haven't been, they will see that there is some sense in what we are doing. And people who go with it, they will find out that there is a tremendous thing, because we never have beats like this.
No,
I mean,
no.
in most of our music, everything reacts like the heartbeat. An interesting chord, or all of a sudden the music takes on rhythmically a little different shape, or sound-wise, everything is constantly in flux in a good performance.
Do you think the musical instruments in the orchestra are physically beautiful before they're played, just as objects?
Most of ours are physically beautiful, and I think it's often beauty comes from if there is a happy marriage between function and people who so much cared about the things that they want this to be congruent with the sound. And I find in the fiddle that's a very nice match, because of course also the material they use in itself has a very lively beauty. A polished piece of beautiful wood seems to also, because it has grown, so it's not there is nothing square in it. It's alive. So things come together there.
It's a part of this picture as well, that an instrument, both the performance of the instrument and the look of the instrument have a part to play. You can look at the instrument and you understand how it works. You don't, unlike a computer game, you don't have to sit there and figure it out. But it's got endless depth that's extremely difficult to fathom. And takes a
physically, one cannot determine what a violin will sound when it's readily built.
Yes.
Because it's all in.
That's true too, isn't it? That's another whole layer of subtlety.
Yeah, but it's all about the same thing. Beauty can only really happen if it's not linked to perfection or to squareness.
That's a wonderful thing to say. Beauty can
I don't know
only
whether
happen.
it's true.
No,
But
well, it better be. It's a very, very good thing.
Yeah, I mean, because everything we deal with is, if it is a piece by Brahms where his emotions lead him to completely different places all the time, and nothing is ever. That's another thing about our bigger compositions. It's always totally in flux, and they deal with how we often really are, that we are 3 minutes in this kind of emotion, but totally other thoughts also come in it, and this is nothing is ever black and white, especially in the emotional business. And the sound of the violin is so fantastic, because you take a tiny bit of the wood here away, and the sound waves, how they go, changes completely. It's not, cannot be determined.
No,
and that's the good thing about it.
Thought. Christian, thank you so much for coming to talk to us about
My
the
pleasure.
OHMI project. It's very, very important, the involvement of musicians, and the ideas of musicians are obviously fundamental to this, and we look forward to talking to you again as the years progress.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
And I love the project.
Thank you.